If you want to start a business in Australia, you need to decide which business structure you're going to use to run your business. You have four main options: a sole trader, partnership, a trust, or a company. Today, I'm going to go through each of these options, how they differ from each other, and what situation they're best suited for. Let's start with the sole trader, and this is the most common business structure. It is the most easiest structure to handle, it's easiest to get started, it's the cheapest, and therefore, it is the most common. So a sole trader is just an ABN in your own personal name, and you are taxed at your own marginal tax rates. So what happens here is we register an ABN, it is linked to our tax file number. When we do our tax return, we include the income and expenses of our business in our return, and whatever our profits are will be taxed at marginal tax rates. So the pros to this, it is really easy to get started. You can go ahead, go online, register an ABN, and you can be started on the same day. You don't have to worry about doing a separate tax return. It's all within your one tax return, so that keeps compliance activity pretty easy and also keeps costs down if you're going through a tax agent. The cons are though, with anything that is simple, typically that means less flexibility. So a sole trader is going to be taxed on their profits no matter what, no matter if they've spent those profits, no matter if they actually want to split them with someone else, you're getting taxed in your own name. This definitely could be expensive for you if you've already got a high taxable income. You also might find some situations where some larger corporations might not want to deal with you as a sole trader. That could be due to their own insurances, or maybe they just don't think you're serious about this business if you're still running as a sole trader. So what are the costs? Well, there are no costs to set up a sole trader. You can go and do this for free. You can apply for an ABN for free. You definitely can pay for this if you want someone else to do it. So a tax agent like myself, we will offer that as a service where we can go set that up for you. And so who is using a sole trader? Well, a lot of businesses are using a sole trader, especially ones that are just starting out. If you're starting a business, typically a lot of people start as a sole trader because it's easy to get started. Maybe they're not sure if this business is going to take off. They're wanting to keep costs really low to start with, and therefore a sole trader is the best option for them. The second option is a partnership, and a partnership is actually very similar to a sole trader, but instead we have more than one person involved or potentially more than one entity. So a partnership does a tax return, but it splits those profits to its partners, and then the partners are taxed at their own individual levels. So we'll keep it really simple and we'll just say we've got two people and they operate a partnership 50-50. What happens? That partnership makes a profit or a loss, and that profit or loss is split into the individuals and they pay tax at their marginal tax rates. So a partnership does have a lot of pros to it because it is quite simple to manage still. We don't have to worry about companies and paying wages and stuff like that, or the complex nature of trusts. We've still got a pretty simple method, but it is a little bit more advanced than a sole trader. We now have the option to be able to split profits. So maybe we've got a husband and wife working in a business together, and instead of it all going through one name, we've now got a partnership where it's being split 50-50. Or maybe we've actually got three people involved and it's easy for us to split it. You can obviously then have a partnership agreement that can state how things are being split. Maybe you don't need a 50-50 split. Maybe it's 75-25, for instance. They are still relatively easy to manage from an overall tax compliance point of view, but you will be aware that there might be some extra costs because you might need to get an actual partnership agreement drawn up. So maybe you want to make sure this partnership is really formalized and you might need to go to a lawyer to get that done. You also might have additional accounting fees because now you've got an extra tax return to do. So that may be a slightly higher price than if you were as a sole trader. So who is using partnerships? Well, a lot of spouses that are running businesses together may use a partnership if they don't feel like it's at the stage where it needs a trust or a company. Well, you might even get a lot of situations where there's a partnership of two trusts or two companies, or a trust and a company, where maybe it's people from non-spouse relationships and therefore they're wanting to protect their assets, and maybe they're going down a different path. Maybe one is set up as a trust, one's set up a company, or they've got their own companies and they're doing some dealings together that dictates that they need a partnership. You also could have spouses that hold a property together. Maybe they hold a commercial property together and they've gone down a partnership route, or maybe they just hold some investments but they wanted to go through a formalized partnership agreement. It's not necessarily that they have to do that. They could just hold things in joint names, but there could be a reason why they actually want to do a partnership. Now, as I go through all these options, I will keep saying that you should be seeking advice. And people go, well, who do I seek advice from? So my business, Rushock Accounting, we do offer advice in these areas when it comes to the tax implications. We're not lawyers. We're not going to tell you the legal implications, but we certainly can tell you about the tax implications and which type of structure would best help you from your tax point of view. So head over to our website and get in touch with us if that is something you need help with. Now let's look at the third one, and we're talking trusts. And when I'm going to be talking about trusts, I'm typically going to be talking about discretionary family trusts, but there are also other trust types such as unit trusts that do have their place in certain situations. So trusts allow us way more flexibility when it comes to who received the profits each year, especially if we're using a discretionary trust. And that is because each year it is the discretion of the trustee on how that income is split. They do what is called a trust distribution resolution each year that dictates how am I going to split the income. So if you're running a business through a trust, you might go, this year I want to split the income 50-50 between me and my wife. Then the next year, you might go, actually, I want that income to be split 50 and then 30% to my wife, and now 20% to my adult son who has started working within the business, and I want to give them a distribution. So you can see the power of using a trust to balance incomes across a family group and to minimize tax across the whole family group. Trust can also allow for multi-generational ownership, so trust can pass down through generations. So you will hear a lot of people build up large wealth in trusts, and that will be typically the avenue they use when they're trying to build up generational wealth. This definitely gets complex. It becomes a bit of an estate planning process. So this is definitely where you want to seek tax advice and also definitely legal advice to make sure you've got this set up correctly. Now, while we're talking about legal, trust can provide a level of legal protection if you're using a trustee company on top of your trust. That one's a little bit more complex. Go and speak to a lawyer about that one. Some of the cons to trust, though, is they can be a little bit confusing to get your head around. You've got all these new terms that are being introduced: settlers, appointers, trustees, beneficiaries, distributions. And if you don't get them right, they can be completely void what you're planning on doing, and you might pay tax at the highest possible tax rate. So getting these things right is really important, and therefore you need to seek advice typically, and therefore the costs of a trust are higher than the sole trader or partnership options. And that's because you're going to have a cost to set up your trust. And depending how complex you make it, that cost could get higher and higher and higher. Then you're going to have additional accounting fees because, again, you've got a tax return that needs to be done. Your trust needs a separate tax return to you as a sole trader or you as an individual. So we've got another tax return. You also are likely going to potentially have legal fees somewhere along the way if you're making changes to your trust or you're wanting that advice to make sure you've got it structured right. One of the other downsides to a trust is that it still typically needs to distribute all of the income in the year it's received. You can't just build up funds within a trust without paying a high rate of tax. So this might not be the best option if you've got people that are already on the highest marginal tax rates, or maybe you've got no one to split the profits with. If you're doing it just for tax minimization purposes, but you're just a one-person band and you've got no one to possibly distribute profits to, then a trust might not be best for you. So who is using trusts? Well, trusts are used for a lot of different purposes. Probably out of all of these options, these are going to be the most mixed cases because you might have businesses that are run through trusts, people that just hold investments through trusts, all the way through to people that are trying to create that generational wealth through trusts. So trusts are definitely complex. There's lots of different options and therefore a lot of different use cases. And then, of course, the last one, companies. So a lot of people, when they start a business, they think they've got to start a company, but that's not always true. But it could be true because companies have a great role to play when it comes to asset protection, just running a business in general, and of course, tax minimization. So a company is great because it allows you to have shareholders. So all of a sudden, a company is great to grow because you can bring in new shareholders quite easy compared to something like a sole trader or a partnership. A company also has a flat tax rate. So whatever profits it makes, it'll be taxed at a company tax rate. So for small business entities, that's only 25%. So this is way lower than the top marginal tax rate. You can retain funds within the company and pay just 25% tax. So it can be great when you're in a massive growth phase of the business. You don't need all the funds personally. You can build them up and pay a lower rate of tax. They can also be great for legal protection because a company is a separate legal entity. And therefore, if something goes wrong, someone might only be able to come after the company's assets, not your personal assets. Now, this is definitely delving into the world of legal protection and something you should go and speak to a lawyer about. Now, of course, companies come with costs. So they come with a setup cost. This can vary anything from probably $700 up to a couple grand, depending on which route you go down. They do come with an annual ASIC fee, which I believe is currently around the $306 mark. So that is something to keep in mind, that you've got those fixed government costs. You're then, of course, going to have additional accounting fees. A company is definitely one of the most complex entity types to run from a tax point of view, and therefore you're likely going to have more accounting fees, especially if you start to delve in the world of paying out dividends or potentially having Division 7A loan issues. Your accounting fees can get higher and higher with a company. So make sure you go and seek a quote from an accountant, not only on the setup costs, but also what your ongoing costs are going to be. Now, if you do go down the company route, it's important that you understand how you're going to get these funds out to yourself. In this upcoming video, I'll go through how companies can actually pay themselves, and just a bit of a sneak peek, there's 4 different main options you're potentially going to use. I thank you for watching this one, and I hope to see you over there.